Some books feel like they belong to a specific moment in time. And then there are others that feel like they're for all time. Well, Friedrich Hayek's The Road to Serfdom is one of those incredibly rare books that's actually both. It was written during the absolute darkest days of the 20th century, but its core warning about the trade-offs we make for progress, well, that's never felt more relevant than it does right now. So let's get in.
At the absolute heart of Hayek's work is this question that really every society has to wrestle with over and over again. What is the right balance between our individual freedom and our collective security? Are they total opposites, where if you gain more of one, you automatically lose the other? This isn't just some dusty academic debate, It literally shapes the world we all live in.
To really understand the power of Hayek's argument, we've got to go back. We need to understand the world that this book came from.
Okay, just think about this for a second. Hayek, who is an Austrian economist living in Britain, is writing this between 1940 and 1943. The world is literally on fire, at war with totalitarianism in both its fascist and communist forms. So for him, this wasn't some abstract thought experiment. It was a desperate, urgent attempt to figure out what ideas led civilization right to the edge of the abyss. And the fact that it was an instant success in 1944 just goes to show how much that warning hit home for people.
And this dedication, wow, it tells you everything you need to know about his goal. This wasn't just him trying to pick a fight. It was a serious intellectual challenge. He wasn't writing this for his enemies. He was writing it as a warning to his friends, to his colleagues in the Western democracies, all the well-meaning people who believed in a kinder, gentler form of state control. He was telling them, hey, the path you're on, no matter how good your intentions are, it starts in the same dangerous place as the regimes we're all fighting against.
So, with all that in mind, let's dig into the central warning of the book itself. What was he so worried about?
And here it is. This is the absolute core of his argument. For Hayek, the economy isn't just one slice of life, separate from your family or your beliefs. No, it's the foundation of everything. If you control the economy, who gets to build what, who gets paid how much, what people are allowed to buy, you ultimately control the means for people to pursue all of their goals, whether they're economic or not.
This is the famous road in The Road to Serfdom. It's not like you just suddenly fall off a cliff into tyranny. No, it's a gentle downward slope. Each little step, a subsidy for this industry, a price control on that product, a new regulation to fix some problem. It all seems perfectly reasonable on its own. But Hayek's big warning is that when you add them all up, the combined effect is a slow, steady transfer of power from individuals to the state. It's a journey away from freedom that's so gradual you might not even notice it's happening.
And this is exactly why Hayek chose this quote from the philosopher David Hume to start his book. It just perfectly captures his whole point. Tyranny doesn't usually show up with a big crash of thunder. It creeps in, little by little, often disguised as something good or necessary, until one day you wake up and realize the entire world around you has changed.
Okay, but why? Why was Hayek so convinced that this slide into serfdom was almost inevitable? Well, the answer gets into his really profound ideas about knowledge, the market, and, believe it or not, morality.
So, let's ask the key question he posed. Why is this idea of a brilliant committee of experts planning an entire economy not just dangerous, but, in his view, completely impossible?
Hayek's truly great insight was what we now call the knowledge problem. And it's simple when you think about it. All the information you need to make an economy work isn't written down in some giant textbook. It exists in the minds of millions of individual people. The farmer who knows his little patch of land, the engineer with a crazy new idea, the shopper who just decided they prefer a different brand of coffee. No central committee, I don't care how smart they are or how powerful their computers are, could ever possibly collect and process all of that scattered, fleeting, and often unspoken knowledge.
So if a central planner can't possibly do it, how does a complex society even function? Well, for Hayek, the answer is the market, and specifically the price system. Prices act like this huge decentralized nervous system. When the price of something goes up, it's a signal. Hey, we need more of this. It encourages producers to make more and tells consumers to maybe use a little less. When a price falls, it signals abundance. It's this beautiful, automatic system that coordinates the actions of millions of people without anyone having to be in charge.
But Hayek's critique wasn't just about efficiency in economics. Not at all. It was deeply, deeply moral. See, when the state starts making all the important decisions for you, what your job is, how much you earn, what you can buy, it slowly chips away at your sense of personal responsibility. That habit of making your own choices, of living with the consequences, of striving for your own goals.
It gets replaced by just following orders and depending on the state.
Hayek used this really powerful image from the French thinker Alexis de Tocqueville to show where this road ultimately leads. And it's not necessarily a brutal, iron-fisted tyranny. It could be a kind of soft despotism, where a government that acts like a parent provides for all your needs, and in doing so, it just smothers the human spirit.
Now, this next point is absolutely crucial, because Hayek's argument has been simplified and, frankly, misunderstood so many times over the years.
So, was he arguing for a brutal, sink-or-swim kind of society with zero support for people who fall on hard times? The answer, which might actually surprise a lot of his critics, is a clear and simple no.
Hayek drew a very bright line in the sand. On one side, you have total planning, where the state tries to direct the entire economy. He was completely against that. But on the other side, he saw a definite role for a social safety net, things like a basic minimum income or insurance against disasters, as long as it was set up outside the competitive market, not by messing with how it works. See the difference? One tries to replace the market, the other just tries to help people who are struggling within it.
And you don't have to take my word for it. Here are his own words on the matter. The goal for him was to provide a basic floor of security without breaking the engine of the market, which he saw as the only way to create progress and coordinate our incredibly complex society. So what is the lasting legacy of this book, written so many decades ago? What's its impact today?
I mean, the sheer range of people who took this book seriously is just staggering. Just look at this list. It shaped the arguments of leaders like Winston Churchill and later reformers like Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, but it was also taken incredibly seriously by socialists like George Orwell, and it became this foundational text for dissidents in Eastern Europe like Václav Klaus, people who had actually lived through the reality of central planning.
But get this. Maybe the most stunning endorsement came from his greatest intellectual rival, the economist John Maynard Keynes. In a letter to Hayek, Keynes said that even though he disagreed on some of the economics, he found himself in deeply moved agreement with the book's moral and philosophical heart. I mean, that just speaks volumes about the power of Hayek's argument.
It's been translated into more than 10 languages, and its message found this incredibly powerful audience, with people who had actually walked the entire road that Hayek had only warned about. For them, this book wasn't a theoretical warning at all. It was just a description of their real, lived experience.
So why does any of this matter to us today? Well, because that fundamental tension, that tug-of-war that Hayek identified, it hasn't gone anywhere, not one bit. In every single debate we have about government intervention or new regulations, we are still grappling with the exact same questions. How much risk are we willing to put up with for the sake of freedom, and how much freedom are we willing to give up for the sake of security?
In a world that's facing huge challenges, pandemics, climate change, economic instability, the call for strong, centralized action gets louder and louder. Now, Hayek's timeless book doesn't give us any easy answers, but it does force us to ask the right and often pretty uncomfortable question. As we try to solve these crises, are we building a path to a more secure future, or are we just paving another road to serfdom?